Pope Leo XIV apologizes for lateness, something worth emulating. In the heart of Vatican City, where history is not just remembered, but lived, there stands a cathedral older than most nations. Under its towering columns and heaven-touched domes, ritual reigns. Order is sacred. Every step, measured. Every breath, accounted for. And among the faithful gathered that morning, no one expected the quiet rupture of tradition that was about to unfold. This was no ordinary morning. It was the Vigil Mass of Saint Felicity. The nave was full. Every candle lit. Every word of the liturgy printed, rehearsed, and readied. The choir had taken their cue. The incense had risen. But the chair, remained empty. For the head of the Catholic Church, punctuality is not politeness, it's divine discipline. Every moment of appearance, every procession, echoes centuries of tradition. The Pope does not miss his cue. He cannot. To do so is not just unexpected, it's unthinkable. And yet, as the bells prepared for the 10th hour, the air changed. Not loud. Not sudden. But different. It was the kind of silence that weighs heavier than sound. A breath held by thousands. And then, at last, the great doors creaked open. He entered, not to the roar of trumpets, not to the swell of organ hymns, but to uncertainty. He raised no hand. He gave no blessing. He paused. Looked at the people. Then, without grandeur, without gesture, he spoke. "I'm deeply sorry for my lateness." No justification. No explanation. Just that. In a place built for proclamations and power, all he gave was honesty. 2 words that echoed, not through microphones, but through hearts. A papal mass is not merely a service. It is theater, yes, but sacred theater. A choreography of faith refined by centuries of devotion. The timing of every entrance, the rise of incense at just the right stanza of chant, nothing is accidental. The floor beneath the basilica has felt the footsteps of emperors and saints. And yet, it waits for no one. The moment the pontiff appears is not simply an entrance, it is the beginning of a covenant between heaven and earth. Time bends to the rhythm of liturgy. To miss that cue, to be absent when the Mass begins, is not simply a delay. It is unheard of. Popes are not late. Popes cannot be late. Protocol would rather halt the rite than continue without him. The Apostolic Palace is just steps away. Guards are stationed. Clergy are briefed. Contingencies prepared. Yet on that Saturday morning, tradition found no answer. And so, for the first time in living memory, the Mass stood still. Not out of disobedience. Not out of disorder. But because the one person who could begin it, had not come. 9:59 a.m. 1 minute passed. Then 2. Then 5. A ripple of discomfort moved through the robes of certainty. Cardinals shifted in their seats. A Swiss guard's jaw tightened. Eyes turned. First to the aisle, then to each other. No sign. No signal. Just time, ticking. In a place where nothing begins without purpose, the absence of movement became its own message. 10 minutes now. The incense had settled. The candles burned lower. The choir boys fidgeted beneath their collars. The silence didn't grow louder. It grew heavier. Was it a security breach? A misstep behind the curtain? An unspeakable emergency? Or was this a moment not ruled by men, but by something older than clocks? The Vatican does not delay Mass for confusion. Not for politics. Not for ceremony. Yet here they were, thousands of pilgrims, priests, and pilgrims turned to stone by a moment they couldn't explain. 15 minutes passed. Then 20. And in a place where every breath is choreographed to scripture, something unplanned had taken over. Then, the doors opened. And what walked through was not tradition. It was not procession. It was presence. Quiet. Solemn. Unexpected. He walked in, not as a sovereign draped in majesty, but as a man bearing something heavier than regalia. He did not raise his hands. He did not chant a blessing. He did not perform. Instead, he paused. Pope Leo XIV. I'm deeply sorry for my lateness. 2 words. No justification. No papal address. No explanation steeped in Latin or liturgical verse. Just that. And in that moment, the ornate walls of Vatican tradition did not fall, but they trembled. Not from scandal. Not from error. But from something even rarer, authenticity. It wasn't reverence for his office that silenced the basilica, it was reverence for his courage. For the first time in years, the congregation wasn't listening to a pope. They were listening to a man. And as the Mass continued, something unseen lingered in the air, not incense, but something quieter. Deeper. A reminder that beneath the vestments, beneath the weight of tradition, lives a soul, capable of pause. To understand what happened that morning, you must forget the marble. Forget the mitre. Forget the thrones of gold. Go back, before he was Pope Leo XIV. Before the white robes. Before the Vatican. Go back, to a humble parish in northern Italy. To a young priest with holes in his shoes and a heart that carried the weight of other people's pain. His name was Giovanni Angelo Moretti. But to the villagers, he was simply Don Giovanni. He was known to walk barefoot in the snow to reach a dying man's bedside. He refused to lock the church, he said God's door should never be closed. When children asked him why he smiled during funerals, he'd say, because we are walking someone home. That morning in Rome, as tens of thousands waited in the basilica, he was not in the papal chambers. He was in a hospital room, far from the press, far from the procession. A boy, no older than 8, lay clinging to life. His parents had written the Vatican weeks earlier. The boy's final wish was to meet the Pope. They say he was late to Mass because he refused to leave, until the boy fell asleep. He chose to delay a global liturgy, for a private moment of prayer. Not because it was expected, but because it was right. That day, he taught the world something we often forget, that holiness is not measured by schedules, but by sacrifice. He didn't quote scripture. He lived it. He didn't cloak the moment in theology or tradition. He didn't defend the delay. He apologized, and meant it. Leadership did not wear gold that day. It did not echo through marble halls or fill volumes of doctrine. It walked slowly, spoke quietly, and bowed its head. He taught with a pause. He preached with delay. And in doing so, he redefined what it means to lead. Not through command, but through compassion. Because on that morning, the world didn't see a pope clinging to power. They saw a man surrendering to love. Was that moment weakness, or strength in its rarest form? If you were in his shoes, would you have done the same? Leave your thoughts in the comments. We want to hear what you believe courage looks like. And if you believe the church still holds stories worth telling, subscribe for more holy history. Next time, we uncover the bishop who defied an emperor, with nothing but a candle and a psalm.